What's up guys, Mickle here, and on this channel we've been talking a lot about a Bitcoin spot ETF and how one could be right around the corner, but in this video I want to talk about exactly what it would do to the spot Bitcoin market, how much Bitcoin would this spot Bitcoin ETF actually absorb, and what would that do for the price of Bitcoin? Guys, this could be absolutely massive in skyrocketing Bitcoin in the next bull market and causing massive institutional demand for all cryptocurrencies. Guys, this is a topic not a lot of people are actually breaking down. I want to give you an in-depth look of exactly what this could mean. Make sure to stick around for that. I also want to talk about in this video an appeal in the Ripple SEC case. I actually just saw some brand new analysis that could show that the SEC might have already shown their cards on whether or not they're going to appeal the Ripple SEC case. Guys, this is one of the most unique pieces of analysis I have seen on this topic. You are not going to want to miss it. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. If you enjoy these videos, make sure to take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really does help so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP or the Flare token, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start out this video and just show you something that was just brought to my attention that I thought was pretty cool, and that is that Uphold and Ripple actually just inked a partnership. Now, obviously, Uphold is a company I work with. It's a company I like a lot. I really enjoy their exchange. I think they do a great job, and they were one of the only exchanges to stick with the XRP holder throughout the entire Ripple SEC case. Almost every other exchange out there delisted XRP and told us, hey, too bad we're not listing this thing. But Uphold stuck with the XRP community, had their back, and allowed us to buy XRP throughout the entire case. So I am really a big fan of Uphold, and obviously I'm a big fan of Ripple, so it's just really cool to see them working together and inking a partnership. Now, what this partnership is, they weren't too specific, but I have a feeling it has to do with Ripple's ODL product and expanding to new corridors, getting more liquidity on centralized exchanges, or possibly Liquidity Hub. It's just really cool to see them working together, and I know I say this all the time, but if you ever need a good place to buy XRP and you don't have an exchange on Uphold yet, well, if you sign up using the link in the description of this video and just buy one XRP on their platform, you will be entered into a contest to win 10,000 XRP. So if you want some free XRP, you want a chance to win 10,000 free XRP, definitely check that out. I wouldn't miss out on that. So now I want to move on and talk about the prospects of an appeal in the Ripple SEC case, because all the big anti-Ripple and XRP Twitter accounts are running around saying that the only reason the SEC dismissed the charges against Brad and Chris was to appeal the Ripple SEC case faster. Now, I want to break down exactly why this actually isn't true at all, and these guys are completely off base, but I actually want you guys to understand that what I'm going to tell you right now is directly from John Deaton. John Deaton said that he wholeheartedly disagrees that the only reason the SEC dismissed their charges against Brad and Chris was to bring an appeal in the Ripple SEC case faster. Now, John Deaton made an excellent point, and that was that the SEC had hundreds of millions of dollars on the line for suing Brad and Chris. This was not small money. If the SEC had evidence to prove that Brad and Chris knowingly were selling unregistered securities, then they would have put those charges forward. The SEC had a ton of money on the line, and at the end of the day, the SEC is always after money. So if the SEC had all this money on the line and it was only going to extend the Ripple SEC case a couple months, why wouldn't they go through with that? And the answer wasn't that they just gave up on the millions of dollars to say, okay, let's appeal the case faster. They could have appealed the Ripple SEC case either way. The reason the SEC didn't go forward with those charges was because they didn't have any substance to them. The SEC overcharged and underdelivered on evidence in this case. They accused Ripple's co-founders, Brad and Chris, of knowingly selling an illegal security in 2013 when a judge ruled that that thing wasn't a security. So what I'm trying to say here is the SEC's charges had no merit. They could not bring this case to trial. It was an absolute embarrassment by the SEC. They were not dismissing the charges against Brad and Chris because they wanted to hurry up and appeal the Ripple SEC case. They were dismissing those charges because they had absolutely zero evidence. And this is what people are ignoring. People are trying to make it seem like this is some smart tactic by the SEC, like the SEC is really doing this to get a win in their favor. No, the SEC brought a case they had zero evidence on, lost, and now are forced to clean up their miserable act by getting these charges they were never going to win out of the way. The people who are trying to paint this as a win for the SEC completely missed the fact that the SEC tried to bring these charges, tried to win hundreds of millions of dollars, and completely failed because they could not gather any evidence to prove these claims. Let me tell you right now, if the SEC had evidence to prove these claims right now, they would not have dismissed these charges. The SEC, like I said before, did not have any evidence to prove their claims, and that's why they dismissed these charges. The whole narrative that the only reason they did it was to hurry up and appeal the Ripple SEC case is completely wrong, and these are the words of John Deaton, not me. But now I want to talk about something else going on that is almost equally as fascinating, and that has to do with kind of a hidden signal that could show that the SEC actually doesn't have any intention of appealing the Ripple SEC case either way. And this analysis was done by attorney Fred Rispoli, and I think you need to see this. Essentially, if you guys remember, there's 3 different groups of transactions under dispute in the Ripple SEC case. We're not going to get into those in specifics, but the only transaction type that Ripple lost on was institutional sales. Now, attorney Fred noticed that in the motion to dismiss the charges against Brad and Chris, only institutional sales were mentioned, right? Only the sales that were deemed securities. Why would Ripple and the SEC have to dismiss charges against Brad and Chris for sales that weren't securities, right? So on the surface, this makes sense. But then you have to think, right? If the SEC did appeal the Ripple SEC case and deemed those other 2 categories that weren't mentioned before as securities, then the SEC could come back and charge Brad and Chris for those other 2 categories. So this would have been a massive hole by Ripple's lawyers that they would have missed. How could Ripple not think of this, right? The SEC could appeal the case and then charge Brad and Chris with these other sales that weren't deemed securities before. So on the surface, this looks really bad for Ripple. Hey, Brad and Chris could get brought back into this case if the SEC wins on appeal. But attorney Fred actually thinks that this was some very smart lawyering by Ripple. He thinks that essentially what happened behind the scenes was that Brad and Chris's lawyers brought this up, right? They're very smart lawyers. They have beat the SEC throughout this entire case. This isn't something they just forgot or didn't realize. It's very likely Brad and Chris's lawyers said, hey, what about these other sales? If you appeal, we want to make sure you're not going to go after Brad and Chris for the other sales either, even if they are deemed securities, right? Why would they not look for protection in case of an SEC appeal? And this is where attorney Fred had his moment of thinking the SEC is not going to appeal. The SEC likely came back to that statement and said, don't worry, we're not appealing the Ripple SEC case. If the SEC had an intention of appealing the case, Brad and Chris's lawyers would have wanted to make sure that every single sale was cleared from Brad and Chris, and they had this leverage against the SEC. But they didn't include these sales in the dismissal. And the only reason that would have happened other than bad lawyering by Ripple, which I think we all agreed probably didn't happen, would be an agreement by the SEC and Ripple not to appeal the case. Now, this is extremely fascinating to me, and there are some assumptions baked into this, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Why would Ripple's lawyers only ask for one subset of the sales to be dismissed when they had the leverage to get every single sale dismissed? The only reason they would have done that would have been if they were given reassurance that these other sales that they were cleared of wouldn't be brought into question. So I just thought this was a really fascinating breakdown by attorney Fred, and I know it was a little complex, but essentially, if the SEC is going to appeal this case, Brad and Chris had the opportunity in this dismissal to get immunity from the appeal. They didn't ask for that. Ripple has smart lawyers. They obviously could have asked for that if they needed it. Instead, it is a lot more likely Ripple and the SEC agreed there will be no appeal. Fascinating stuff and great breakdown by attorney Fred. And I want to finish this video off and just quickly talk about the Bitcoin spot ETF. What kind of demand could this actually do for Bitcoin? Because I've been talking a lot about how a Bitcoin spot ETF could be right around the corner, what it could do for the entire cryptocurrency market, but I actually haven't talked numbers. And the reason I haven't talked numbers is just because I really didn't know. But a guy named Mike Alford actually did a very interesting analysis on exactly how much physical Bitcoin a spot Bitcoin ETF would drive, and he predicts that it would actually take several million Bitcoins in order to satisfy all the customer demand that's going to be created by these new products. When the SEC approves a Bitcoin spot ETF, millions of people around the world are going to have access to Bitcoin who never had it before. These institutions are going to have to buy Bitcoin to back up that demand. And guys, we are looking at millions of Bitcoin coming off the market. What Mike Alfred says here, and he's a Bitcoin maxi, so take this in perspective, but he thinks this could drive the price of Bitcoin over $200,000. Now, I have to agree with him. If these institutions actually are liquidating millions of Bitcoin from the spot market, that is going to be an insane catalyst. There's only 21 million Bitcoin out there, and these different institutions have trillions of dollars of customer assets. Guys, this is a massive catalyst that is right around the corner, and if you think this is only going to affect Bitcoin, you are dead wrong. Right now, every single crypto is reacting to the news of these spot Bitcoin ETFs, and as inflows of money come into Bitcoin, it's going to come to the entire sector. I think a lot of people are underappreciating just how much demand these spot Bitcoin ETFs are about to drive, because if it really is millions of Bitcoin coming off the spot market, guys, we are right around the corner from something absolutely massive. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean so much, and for now, Mickle out.